the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, in a world just constantly buzzing with global news, especially from the Middle East, it often feels like getting the full picture is, well, almost impossible.
Right. The context just gets lost sometimes.
Exactly. So today we're going to dig into something really complex, really critical. The whole debate around U.S. foreign policy on Iran, specifically their nuclear ambitions and that ongoing Iran-Israel tension.
That's it. And we're basing this deep dive on a really insightful piece, looking closely at Vice President J.D. Vance's recent defense of President Trump's Iran policy. You know, it was quite high profile.
It was.
So our mission today is really to kind of cut through all that noise. We want to unpack the messaging, the tensions within that defense, understand what specific criticisms Vance was trying to counter.
Okay.
And then explore what the administration's, let's say, unique approach means well for you listening.
Absolutely. So stick with us. We promise a shortcut to getting genuinely informed on this tricky geopolitical issue. We'll cover some maybe surprising facts and hopefully offer some clear insights without all the jargon overload. Let's uncover the layers. Okay, so Middle East chessboard. It got pretty volatile recently, didn't it? And then this key voice, Vance, steps up from inside the administration. What were the specific worries, the concerns bubbling up that really made his statement necessary?
Well, like you said, the immediate backdrop was that Iran-Israel conflict really heating up. And that created some serious apprehension in certain political corners, people worried about the U.S. getting pulled in.
Right, the entanglement fear.
Exactly. And our source material points specifically to criticisms coming from, you know, some well-known figures in the Make America Great Again or MAGA movement, like commentator Tucker Carlson. He actually accused the Trump administration of being complicit in Israel's military actions against Iran.
Complicit is a strong word.
Very strong. And it wasn't just like abstract political chatter. It sparked real fear, you know, that the U.S. might get dragged into a much wider war in the region.
And it wasn't just talk, was it? I mean, were there actions President Trump took himself that kind of fanned those flames?
Yeah, there were. The article mentions a couple things. For instance, President Trump leaving the G7 summit early said he needed to monitor the Middle East situation specifically.
Okay, that sends a signal.
It does. And then he even put out that pretty stark warning telling Tehran residents to immediately evacuate. Those are very direct moves that definitely got people talking.
And his social media, that really amplified things, right? Can you give us some examples of those posts? The source mentions some specific ones.
Sure. His posts on Truth Social, yeah, they were quite something, according to the article. He posted, he knew exactly where Iran's so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was hiding. Yeah. And he also called for Iran's unconditional surrender. Then, maybe hitting closest to those public fears about war, he wrote this: "We are not going to take him out, kill, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers."
So, firm statements, but with that little caveat, at least not for now,
Yeah.
definitely fueled the discussion.
No doubt.
Okay, so this is where Vance stepping in gets really interesting, because Vance, he's known as this longtime critic of neoconservatism, right? And what he calls endless war.
That's right.
So he has credibility with people on the right who are skeptical of, let's say, the traditional foreign policy establishment. Given all that, how did he actually defend the president's approach here? What was his core line?
Well, his main argument, looking at the article, really centered on two things: consistency and restraint, plus a very clear red line about nuclear weapons.
Okay, consistency and restraint. How did he frame that?
He said Trump has been, quote, amazingly consistent over 10 years that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That was point one. He also stressed that the president had actually pushed his team to try and reach a deal with the Iranians to stop that from happening.
A deal.
Yeah. And Vance then laid out how Iran apparently had the choice to keep civilian nuclear power, but without enriching uranium themselves. They rejected that.
And instead, they chose.
They chose to enrich uranium far above the level necessary for any civilian purpose. Okay. And that's the key step, you know, towards building a bomb.
Right. The enrichment level is crucial.
Crucial. And because of that, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, the nuclear watchdog, they found Iran was in violation of its non-proliferation obligation. basically breaking the rules they'd agreed to.
So Vance was painting a picture of Iran deliberately pushing the boundaries, not just pursuing peaceful energy. Did he directly counter arguments that maybe Iran did need enrichment for peaceful reasons?
Oh, absolutely. He threw down a pretty direct challenge. He said, and I'm quoting roughly here, "It's one thing to want civilian nuclear energy. It's another thing to demand sophisticated enrichment capacity."
Sophisticated capacity, meaning faster breakout time.
Exactly. Shortens the timeline to a potential weapon drastically. And Vance continued, saying it's still another to cling to enrichment while simultaneously violating basic nonproliferation obligations and enriching right to the point of weapons-grade uranium. He basically finished by saying he hadn't heard any good reason why Iran needed that level of enrichment or why they were justified in breaking their commitments.
Okay, so a strong focus on the nuclear red line, but what about the other part, the remarkable restraint you mentioned? How did Vance square Trump's pretty fiery language with this idea of restraint?
Yeah, that was a really key piece of his defense. The idea was that the administration's tough talk, all those strong statements, they were always paired with a sort of strategic reluctance to actually start new conflicts. But interestingly, Vance also left the door open a crack. He hinted at future possibilities, saying the president may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. But adding that decision ultimately belongs to the president.
So trying to have it both ways a bit, reassure the base, but keep the pressure on Iran.
It certainly looks like threading a needle, doesn't it? Trying to calm those fears about war at home while still sounding tough on the nuclear issue internationally.
And he seemed very aware of those domestic fears. He directly said, and of course, people are right to be worried about foreign entanglement after the last 25 years of idiotic foreign policy. He used the word idiotic.
He did. That's a direct nod to that war weariness. Then he followed up by trying to build confidence, saying Trump has, quote, earned some trust on this issue and is only interested in using the American military to accomplish the American people's goals.
So a clear attempt to manage those domestic worries while keeping options open.
That seems to be the strategy, yes.
Okay, so Vance lays out this defense. Consistency, restraint, red lines, but maybe future action. And then almost immediately after, the president himself says something pretty dramatic. What was that again?
Yeah, shortly after Vance put out his defense, President Trump made this really striking statement. He declared that we, and the assumption is he meant the U.S. and Israel, have gained total control of the skies over Iran.
Total control of the skies. That sounds significant, militarily speaking.
Oh, it's incredibly significant. It implies, complete air superiority, deep intelligence capabilities, basically the power to operate freely overhead.
Yeah.
For that statement to come right after Vance was emphasizing restraint, well, it suggests a pretty complex strategy.
Deterrence and reassurance at the same time, maybe.
Could be. It paints a picture of capability, of readiness, without necessarily promising immediate action. It reinforces that red line on nukes, maybe, without explicitly saying war is coming tomorrow.
So, okay, let's pull this together. For you listening, trying to follow these high-stakes geopolitical chess moves, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think what's really fascinating, and maybe the core takeaway, is seeing how this administration, or perhaps any administration, tries to walk this tightrope. You've got the stated goal preventing a nuclear Iran, which many agree on.
Right.
But then you have this deep-seated public concern, especially within their own base, about avoiding these endless wars, avoiding foreign entanglement.
That tension is clear.
Very clear. And Vance's defense is almost a textbook example of trying to bridge that gap, trying to sound tough, maintain credibility internationally, but also reassure people at home that they aren't rushing into conflict. It really shows the challenge leaders face, balancing these firm declarations with maybe a private desire to de-escalate, all while juggling political pressures back home.
So as you process all this, maybe think about that balancing act. How do leaders weigh something like stopping nuclear proliferation against the very real risks of military action? And how do you personally weigh those things?
Yeah, and how do you interpret these public statements, knowing they're often crafted for multiple audiences at once, foreign adversaries, allies, and critically, the domestic audience?
It also makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much do the worries of a political base actually shape or maybe even constrain a president's choices on the world stage? And how does that then get reflected in the public messaging we all hear?
That's a great point. It connects directly to the broader picture. This whole situation really highlights that constant push and pull in foreign policy.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Next time you hear a leader draw a red line, ask yourself who that message is really for. Is it just the adversary? Or is it also aimed squarely at calming fears or maybe managing expectations right here at home? What's the real role of public trust or maybe public skepticism in shaping how a nation acts, especially when the stakes are so high and the path forward is anything but clear?